I run into this new product today. Maybe you know it, or maybe you run into it. I guess it's pretty new. And I sort of came up with the opportunity supporting this product. And so I invented those opportunities. Opportunities are not what you're going to do. Opportunities are just facts in the market, changes in the market that you can take advantage of. So from this time to that time, there's an increase of people that have been worrying about radiation according to some source. So radiation from 5G, radiation from Bluetooth. And so some people are worried about this. There's Bluetooth everywhere, there's the 5G towers and so forth. From this time to this time, people have been increasingly more worried about the sun damage and maybe some issues with skin cancer, according to some source. From this time to that time, there's been a huge increase of worrying about microbes and viruses and the fact that you could catch them by just being around. So that generated the creation of a company called LAMS. The website is actually called getlams.com. And LAMS is a company that makes clothing using some material that supposedly block the sun and the radiation and all that. So they sell beanies that you wear in order not to be subjected to Bluetooth and so forth. But not only that, they also sell shirts and t-shirts that are blocking. And they also sell underwear. So they sell underwear because they want the male genitalia to be protected. So LAMS, essentially, that's the idea, is making this product, and that's the opportunity, is people caring for it. If people are not worried about 5Gs, should you be making product that protects of 5Gs? No. If people are not worried about Bluetooth being sort of polluted by Bluetooth, should you create products to protect people of Bluetooth? No. Do this product even have to protect very well or be as good as this claims say? Well, you would hope so. But the reality is, as long as people think it works, that's all that matters. So what are the benefits? When I look at the benefit, I almost feel like, wow, that's pretty impressive. I mean, it helps you with your digestion, the health of your skin. They even say that if you wear those underwear or those beanies, you sleep better at night because you're more rested, that you get tired. So I almost felt after I figured out what was LAM's benefits, that now I'm worried that I'm going to get subjected to 5G. Before I was a little worried about 5G, but I didn't think about it. Now I know that there are products protecting you from 5Gs. No, I'm really worried. Now I'm really thinking there is a problem. And now I'm in doubt, going to buy a beanie to protect my head. Anyway, that's what consumer may be thinking, is because there's a product that exists, maybe there's a problem that this product is taking care of. So sometimes that's what products do, is they get more obvious by products existing. So the interplay of opportunities, ideas, and execution is very important. And that's what you need to do to present to Nishwaki. So we were just talking about what is the connection between what we do and Vove. So there's something that you don't know. It's not posted anywhere. It's not in anyone's syllabus, and you just don't know. But it actually happens. The Vove people, they actually come to see your presentation, and they learn a lot about the artist. They learn more than they knew before, to the point that it gives them some ideas of what they need to do in the weeks that follow. So believe it or not, but we're actually helpful because we help them think more tactically and strategically, because they hear all the things that you have to say. The Vove students also get inspired. So how do I know this? I know this from the Vove student that have told me that after your presentation, they more clear about what they could do or what they should do with Nishwaki for the few weeks, because it's not going to last very long, but for even just for the few weeks they have them. And I also know it from Professor Izo, that tell me that he sees a big difference between what the students are thinking of doing in January, February, and March, and what they actually do after they come to see the presentation from the Maya students. So don't think that there is no benefits for anyone and all what you're doing is wasted. It's not, because obviously we have stories after stories of success stories of things that this has helped the Vove people, and as much as we can, because like I said, Vove is something that is temporary, so it's not a miracle that we can do. At the same time, it has helped. So that's what you do, is you try to find this long-term direction for the client. Now, where we were last time, going back to the lecture, is we're talking about pricing, and I talked about the fact that there's 4 methods of pricing, from just using the cost or just doing a financial analysis by looking at how many products should we sell to generate profit, to look at what the consumer are willing to pay, and then simply looking at what are the prices from our competitors and just aligning ourselves to this pricing. And then that was the last information that I discussed, was the 4 main pricing strategies. So the 2 big ones are scheming and penetration. And so scheming is about trying to have the highest price as possible, not to sell the most product, but to get the most profit out of the sales of these products. Then the penetration pricing, which is trying to sell at the lowest price as possible, not to make the most money from each product being sold, but from getting as quickly as possible market share. And then you have the product line pricing strategies. So there's several. There's the optional, where you make money from the various accessories that people can buy with the product. So the product in itself is actually a really good deal, but when people buy them, they rarely buy them just as being standard. They always want to get some options with it, and so they make money on the options. Today I had a meeting with a group, and we talked a lot about cruise ship. I have a family member that went to a cruise very recently, and he was telling me that the cruise were not expensive, but what happened is they had all kinds of upgrades, like food upgrades and event upgrades and visit upgrades, and that these upgrades were actually, by comparison, very expensive. So I was telling him that this is called optional pricing, where you make money not from the cruise so much, but from having the people already in the cruise that are going to spend money on some options, and on the options, the markup is much bigger. Captive product pricing is the not so much the accessory, but the products that you'll have to buy in order for the main product to be able to use it. So you're going to buy some toner for a printer, and the money you're going to make is from the toner. Byproduct, we didn't talk about it yet. It's the idea that sometimes when you make products, you have the opportunity to sell something that is not really the main thing that you're making, but it's something that comes from the production or of the main product. So let's say you're making furniture, and then you have sawdust. You're not in the business of selling sawdust, but you have so much sawdust that you may as well try to sell it, and then you sell the sawdust for various applications. Maybe you're selling it to someone that breeds dogs and cats, or a zoo or something, and that's just as well generate a revenue. Then bundling is the concept that you can try to sell some products that are hard to sell by adding some products. So you have a hard time selling your new flavored toothpaste. So what you do is you get people to buy the toothbrush and the toothpaste, and the toothpaste is essentially very discounted. So instead of buying a $1 toothbrush, you're going to buy a $2 toothbrush, but there's also a toothpaste that you would have paid $2.50, but in that situation, you're only paying $1 for it. Or you could be buying several toothpaste at once, and if you divide the price of the combination by the number of units, you will see that it's much cheaper. So it's like you buy concert tickets, and instead of buying one concert tickets, you buy a season concert tickets, and that way you can go many more times, and the price of each ticket is actually much cheaper, but you ended up spending much more money because you bought a bulk. So bundling allows you to sell more, to increase the revenue. It allows you to introduce new products, that allows you to get rid of some products that you have excess inventory, or and so it's one of these decisions. Then competitor-based pricing is essentially just taking the price of your competitors and trying to sell it again the same price as your competitors. When you talk about pricing, you also need to think about what kind of discounts you may be giving. So you give a cash discount, a quantity discount, some discount for a special time, or during a special moment of the year, or maybe because you have a limited amount of time discounts, or maybe a discount for people that are part of a club. Segmented pricing is the most common type of pricing where different people will have different prices. So the it's like if you're a student, you have a different price than if you're a non-student. If it's in the airport, it's a different price than if it's outside of the airport. If it's on Tuesday night, it's a different price than it's on Saturday night. If people buy the product with a bottle that is recyclable, it's not the same price as if they're buying it with a plastic bottle. So different products, different location, situation, people will give different pricing. Then the last pricing list I want to talk about, but I won't go in great detail for each one of them, but it's the fact that there's many different promotional pricing. All of these are pretty common, and people know them. What's a cash rebate and a free merchandise? The one that you may not be so aware of is the concept of loss leader. Do you know what's a loss leader?
No.
No?
Isn't that where the best example I can give is
Yes.
Costco sells their chickens for like $5 or something, and it's
Yes.
like, okay,
Yes, that's what it is.
yes.
So
And
that's
they're
right.
so good.
Yeah, so thank you, Natalie, for sharing that. So the example of Natalie is a loss leader. And it's very common in supermarkets because what they do is they try to, they know that there's a product that will increase people's interest to shop. And so what they would do is they would have, it's, for the most part, it's illegal to do loss leader. However, it's very common that business do that, is they would have this one or two products that they would offer at a low price, so low that they may not even make money, and that's what's illegal about it. But it's hard to for the government to go, grab a situation where that's the case. And the company will lose money on a certain product because that would attract people to come and shop. So the $5 chicken at Costco is so they get you to Costco, and while you go there, you buy some chips or you buy a TV set. And so they made money on the TV set, but not so much on the chicken, but the chicken is enough there to attract people. So Walmart selling a very good barbecue, for example. It's like a barbecue, which should really be $300, and for some reason, it looks like it's $199. And so they somewhat either not making any money or even maybe losing some money. So they advertise it inside a magazine or through text or through the internet or what, social media. And then people go to the store and there's only one left or there's none left because they have very few of these. And then the people will spend money on something else. So that's still a promotional method that is very commonly used. Now we're going to move into distribution. So it's the P of place. And it's not the last P that we'll review because we'll have to look at promotion after. So we did product, price, and now we're doing place. So distribution channel is this concept that there are intermediaries. And these intermediaries have to work together in creating the process of making the product available for the consumers. And so they are a business, and it's a business to business for the sake of bringing the product to the consumer. What's very important is to understand, and it's hard to understand unless you have had to do it, but there is a cost in distributing. People don't buy the best products. They buy the product that has been made available. So there's a cost in making the product available. Or they're buying the product that is the most sold, the most advertised, the most promoted, the most popular. And that has a cost as well. So when you buy a product, most of the time is you buy a product where there's a lot of money for marketing. And so what's the percentage? 20%, 40%. So if you buy something $100, there's $40 to get you to want to buy the product. So by promotion. But there is also a large percentage, which is due to the fact that someone has to put it somewhere where it's accessible. And it's, I would say, the most common type of product being purchased is not so much because of the Super Bowl ads, but it's because it's in the right location at the right time. So you have to sort of either create a network of distribution, which is very expensive and it takes a long time, or use someone whose specialty is not so much to produce, but to distribute the product. So you share the cost of the final product for people to actually have access to it. So when people go, I give you a very down-to-earth example that I run into with a lot of people, including students all the time. Students say, hey, professor, I heard you making some cognac. Yes. How much is your cognac? And then I say, well, my cognac is $100, $150 a bottle. And then the students look at me and say, wow, your cognac, a bottle is $150. You must be very rich, professor. And so what, and these are business students. What they don't realize is it takes about, the ratio is from a producer to a distributor. There's no one ratio for everything. There's no one ratio for car, water, mineral bottled water, and diamonds. The diamond ratio is 25 times. A car is 20%. So it's not the same ratio, but for cognac, it's about 4 times. So if it's, if a bottle is $150, I didn't sell it $150. I sold it $35. So I sold it $35 to an importer that sells it to a wholesaler, that sells it to a retailer. And each one of these people are making money for the product to get to the hands of people. So that's how you end up being 150. I didn't sell it 150. I wish I sold it 150, but I only sold it 35. So it's the same oftentimes is if you buy a product from a big company, you most of the time don't buy the best product because you buy the product that has had the most money put into it in order to promote it and to distribute it. So if I was to say, using the example of cognac, if you buy my cognac at $150, to produce it, it cost me $35 because I don't market, I don't have a huge marketing program. Some of my competitors have, I have competitors that can easily throw a party for $200,000 in one city. And they can do that to 20 cities at the same time, every weekend. So they have huge budgets. They have $50, $60 million budget that they can throw in there. I don't have this kind of thing. So every time you spend $150, they didn't sell it 35, but they sold it for 45. They sold it for more money. And so because they have to get the money to pay back all the expenses. So that's the true world that we live in. Students ask me all the time, is there a secret for business? Is there some kind of hush thing that business people do and they don't tell? Well, that's a lot of this has to do with marketing and distribution because they both cost a lot of money. And you want to try to do the least as possible because the least you do this, the more you can put money not into the marketing, but into the quality of your products. But consumers, they don't know quality. So oftentimes what they buy is they buy what they see available, what they see that everybody buys, what they see is the most popular. But unfortunately, when they do that, they don't get the product where most of the money that was spent in this product was in the product, but it was inside the distribution and marketing. So what do you get from the distribution? The distributors, and this is very important, will have the opportunity to buy your product. And obviously, they are your number one customer. Who's your number one customer? The final buyer, the consumer. True. But before there is a consumer, there is always a business. And so this business is very important because the business will buy 100 products versus the consumer may be buying one product a year versus the distributor may be buying 1,000 per year. So they buy, so therefore they finance, therefore they take a risk, therefore they collect information and provide information. They also do promotions. So the promotions that the distribution company do, you as a producer oftentimes have to pay for it. So if you don't fully pay, you co-pay for it. It is very rare and it's becoming more and more rare, and probably in 10 years it won't exist because it's disappearing, that distributors don't get the producers to also pay for it, for the promotion. So if they say, you know, 2 for the price of one, the one that is biting the bullet is not the supermarket or the Amazon who's doing that, but actually the producer. They create matching, which is that they get a lot of your products and they see to fit your product with the best intermediaries in order to sell the product. And also they do the storing because, you know, think about the situation that we had a year and a half ago where gas prices, how much was the price of gas from the producer a year and a half ago? Like you're in Saudi Arabia, how much was the gas price? So a year and a half ago, the Saudi Arabia producer of gas were paying people to come and get the gas. So imagine this, you come with a boat and they give you money to take the gas away, right? And then when they were selling the gas, how much they were selling it at the gas station? At $2.50. So that was very nice. I mean, they were super happy. It's like minus 50 cents, they're selling it $2.50. You know, now the barrel is what, 120 or whatever. So it went from minus to 120. So that's what I mean. This is the distribution network. That's what you have to deal with. You need the producer, you need the intermediaries. So there's many intermediaries. There's the people that do the refinery, there's the people that do the shipping, there's the people that do the storing and all of this. And that's what happened. A year and a half ago, there was no more storing. So the pumps were pumping oil and there was no consumption of oil. Therefore, they had to store it somewhere. And they didn't have the resources to store oil for months and months and months like this. So that's why they were giving the oil away, because it was going to cost them more money to stop the pump and start the pump again. So they would rather pay someone and buy the bullet and give the gas for free or actually pay people. So you sometimes need distributors because they take charge of the physical goods and they do the warehousing. How did I even start my cognac business? My first cognac that I produced was not even produced. What do you mean? What I mean is I bootstrap my business by having my distributor actually finance my business. What do you mean? What I mean is that I produced some samples. I produced a dozen of samples, which I paid. Then I took the samples and then I went to see distributors. I showed them the samples and they asked me how many did I have of these? And I told them, I have as many as you want. And then they made an order. They bought 5,000 bottles. I didn't really have the money to produce all these 5,000 bottles. So what I asked them to do is give me a deposit. I took that deposit and then I used that deposit to give a deposit to the various people that I needed to produce these 5,000 bottles. Then they started producing. Then I asked for a delay of payment from the producers. Then I delivered it to the distributors. Then the distributors paid me, and then I paid everybody. So I totally bootstrapped the system in the sense that I had nothing to sell, but nobody knew that. All I had was samples. So in a way, it's cool what you did. Why? It's cool because I was using my distributors as the bank. What do you mean? Well, they were actually financing my business. Their deposit was the financing process I was using in order to finance the growth of my business. Wow. Do they all do that? No. Do they like to do that? They hate it. They don't want to be financing. So what does that mean? So that means they try not to give you a deposit. So how can you do it some other way? Well, you can go see your bank. and then you can take the purchase order, and then you can negotiate with your bank the purchase order in order to get the bank to take a chunk of the invoice. But what does that mean? That means you're going to lose some profit. So if your profit is 25% and you give 15% to the bank, how much you're left with? You're left with 10%. But with 10%, 10% plus 10%, 10%, you always stay poor, and you have a very hard time in financing your business and growing very big. It takes you forever, or you need a lot of orders in order to grow with 10%. So that's what you do. You need the distributors because they pay for distribution. You need the distributors because they take possession and ownership of the products. So when you do distribution, you have several channels that you can use. So the one I was describing is the long one, the more traditional one, where you have a M for manufacturer, W for wholesaler, it's the one at the bottom, and R for retailers, and then C is for consumers. J, it's called jobbers, so it's J-O-B-B-E-R. It's the various intermediaries that you have that are going to provide a service, like a UPS truck, like a DHL truck, like someone that's going to be helping you in the process to go from wholesaler to retailer. So you could have even a jobber from the manufacturer to the consumers. So the direct channel is when you have nobody in between you and the consumers. The advantage of the direct channel is that you can increase your sales profit because you can sell the product at a much higher price. The mistake people do is, let's take my case again. Let's say I usually sell for $35, and then it ends up being in the shelf for $150. When you know this is very upsetting, as a consumer, you should be very upset because you go, wow. I remember last week, James Gavigan that was talking about the merch. And he was saying, you know, those t-shirts probably cost $8 and they sell it for $100. Well, that's sort of what happens, is because you have suddenly lots of intermediaries. And so $35, if I sell it direct, should I sell it for $150? What should I sell it for? Normally I sell it $35. Now I can sell it directly to the consumer. How much should I sell it? Do you have any idea? How would you do it?
Just keep it at 150.
So that's one option. You keep it at 150. Why would you keep it at 150?
Because they're willing to pay that much.
Because they're willing,
yeah.
They're willing to pay that much, so you may as well get the profit for yourself. Exactly. Now, this is true. However, when you sell direct, you don't sell that many. So therefore, you may as well sell it for high. So, but if you sell it the same price as the distributor, you're competing with your distributor. If you sell it for more, the distributor don't care. If you sell it for less, they're very upset and they may even never work with you anymore. So you have to be very careful when you do both, direct and indirect, because you're going to burn some bridges. So one recommendation is you try to sell things direct that are not available through your distributors. That way you compete selling the same category of product, but you don't have the same models. That way you can keep sort of some loyalty for the distribution channels. The distribution channels in general are not loyal. People in distributions are very disloyal. They change, turn coats very quick. However, you as a producer, you can't do that. The distributors can do that, but you can't do that because you'd be misjudged. So why are the distributors change coats and that's sort of okay versus the producer cannot do that? Is because there's a difference of bargaining power. The bargaining power is most of the time, not always, most of the time in the end of the distributor. That's why if you look at who are the richest people now and who were the richest people 40 years ago, 20 years ago, and all that, you're going to find there's a lot of companies that are into distribution. It's one of the best ways to get rich is do distribution because the investment is still less than being a producer. If you look at the top 50 richest people, you will actually find that there's not many producers that actually have a factory and lots of employees and make things. They don't. And if they do, they certainly try as much as they can not to make anything in America because it's too expensive. So they're going to make it overseas. And that's the world that we live in. It's not what I want, but it is what it is. When you have a distribution channel, you have to think about the different way you organize your channels, where sometimes you have to be different intermediaries that are not connected, and sometimes you are intermediaries that are actually connected. Like we are talking about Costco just a few minutes ago. Costco will be the one that does the manufacturing, the one that does the wholesaling, and the one that does the retailing. They do all at once. Home Depot would do something like this, even though they may not be manufacturing themselves, but they're going to get something manufactured by someone else. So obviously, when you have a vertical system of distribution, is you have more control on the distribution, on the prices, on the quality, and therefore you're not losing any of the profits that are given between all of the different intermediaries. But yes, Denise.
Can I get an example of how it would work in entertainment, like with movies or music?
Oh yes. So in this situation, that's why you have you know, the big label versus you have the independent. The independent are trying to keep less people involved in the processes and have the artists directly involved with the independents. And that's what essentially what they're trying to do also with the STEM player, is they're trying to avoid having more intermediaries, like trying to avoid having Spotify or all of these in the middle. So you know, this has been before 2000, it was very clear in the music industry. There was the big general labels, and that's it. And after 2000, when, you know, people starting not to buy as much music, but to download music, then the world has changed, and it became a different integration of the different intermediaries being reduced, and artists starting to try to sell themselves. Yes, Natalie.
I was wondering if on slide 13, if you could clarify what the MCRW, is that manufacturer?
Yeah, M is manufacturer, W is wholesaler, R is retailer, and J is jobber. JOBBR.
Gotcha.
So manufacturer is the one that turn material into goods. Wholesaler is the one that buy large amounts of a few products, large amount of a few. And then let me tell you the R before the J. And the retailer is the opposite, is they buy a few amounts of a large variety of products. So a wholesaler, let's say, is going to buy 50 different items, but they're going to be buying 10,000 of 15 items even. Versus a retailer, he's going to be buying 10,000 items, different items, but only 15 of these.
I see.
So what's that seems to be like a detail, but it's not, because it means therefore that the wholesaler role is to really understand the concept of matching. Since they only sell 15 things and not 1,000 things, is they are very limited to fewer places where they can sell it to. So trying to sell it to the wrong places is going to make a waste of energy. So they have to channel the energy to the few places that they know. So what it takes is experience. So it takes a long time to be a successful wholesaler. It takes less time to be a successful retailer, because the retailer, the success is very based by the location. So if you don't know what you're doing, if you don't even sell really good things, but you have the best location, you'll still succeed. Versus as a wholesaler, the margins are much smaller, and therefore you can't make a mistake. And so you have to be very good at knowing who wants what. And that's why the trade show is so good. So the trade show are coming back somewhat. Hopefully there's not a new virus and then they go away, but the trade shows are very good because that was the opportunity. You go to a trade show and you have a lot of people looking for specialty, for unique type of, and then they will find you there. And if you don't do a trade show, the other methods is maybe to use email marketing. Now, what's really cool, obviously, is social media that plays a role for wholesaler, where in fact, people will find people on Facebook or through Instagram by finding those wholesalers that have unique products. A little bit like we're just looking at lamps. These are the things that are very difficult to get to a retailer, because the retailer is going to be wanting something that is already successful. A little bit like this conversation I have had with so many students where we said, oh, Nishwaki is going to go to a cruise and then he's going to tour with a cruise. The problem is the cruise only going to take Nishwaki if Nishwaki has already a fan base. So it's like my undergraduate students. They say, you know what, the problem is all the employers, they want us to be new and fresh and young, and at the same time, they want us to have a lot of experience. It's not possible to be young and have a lot of experience. So you have to make this compromise here. So the wholesalers are sort of a little bit like what I would say realtors, real estate agents. A real estate agent that do well is most of the time, by definition, someone that's done it for a long time. It's rare to have done it for a year and be as good as someone that's done it for 10 years, because it takes time. So therefore, when I speak to students, oftentimes they go, oh, I'm going to go in retail, or oh, I'm going to go in wholesale. Few people want to go in wholesale, and they don't realize that wholesale is much, it's sort of, for the most part, cheaper than retail. And that's why you see a lot of people going into eBay or Amazon store or whatever, because they figure out the wholesale. But it takes a while to get the traction, versus the retail. If you have the right location, you can be successful. So I went into a lot of details that are like hardcore, the importance 101 of distribution, because I'm 100% that you will face all the things that I've discussed, if you haven't faced it already, when you're going to go work in various industries, as you will be in your career. But it is very important to understand that distribution is a game, and it's a game of who you know and how you understand the game. It's almost like saying, I'm going to play Monopoly, but I don't know very well the game, or playing chess, not knowing the game. You're going to lose. That doesn't mean that you're not intelligent. It's because you don't know the game very well. And so distribution is like this. It takes several years just to understand how the system works. That can be very frustrating. So now let's talk about, do you have another question, Natalie?
The only other question, thank you for the explanation, was the J.
Oh yeah, the jobber. So the jobber is an intermediary that you have between the wholesaler and the retailer.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But so it's like, let's say you have a UPS truck. You have a truck company. That's a jobber. But that's not the only type of jobber. There's a jobber that is much more interesting than that. And when people ask me, okay, so you have to tell me what's the best job in the world. The best job in the world actually is a jobber. He's a broker. In the music industry, it's a manager or a talent agent. That's a jobber. So it's someone that represents artists and connect them with majors or concerts and all this. So that's one of the jobs you can make the most money, because you can have many artists that you cover. And as you become better at managing one artist, you can get a second artist and a third, and then you have a very good talent agency. So it's the same. What job should you do to get rich fast? Like this, broker, jobber. You do real estate brokerage. It's kind of cool because you don't own any of these houses. Like you're going to sell $1 million, $2 million houses, but you didn't spend a dime. It's someone else's house. And you're going to make a commission out of this. So it's only your talent and also your investment in order to sell that house. But then you can make commissions on the person that buys and on the person that sells. So it's the same thing. You could say, you know what? I do brokering of software. I do brokering of diamonds. I do brokering. You can do brokering of everything. And so there's a lot of money to be made because brokers oftentimes do not have to spend any money. They just know someone that has the diamond and someone that wants to buy the diamond. And all they do is the connection between the two. So they get paid for the connection. So obviously you have to have very good legal protections because you have nothing to offer beside putting people to connect with each other. But it's if you are good with people and if you're someone that's good at networking, you can do it for any industry. And there's some industry where you can make a lot of money. I was watching a video of a guy that flanked the university. He couldn't finish his bachelor. He couldn't finish. And he went to work for a company that was selling used cars. And he was just a salesperson for used cars. And eventually he was selling more and more expensive used cars to the point that he became a vintage car broker. And all he does now is he sells car over $2 million, nothing less than $2 million, the cheapest car. So what happens is the people that are very rich, they have like their own little museum. They have 25 cars, 30 cars in one of their houses. And so he's very famous. They grab the phone and they call Simon and say, hey, Simon, I want to sell 5 of my 30 car or whatever. And each one is worth 5 million, one is worth 6 million. And then he calls another person that wants that car. And all he does is makes phone call. And he makes 10% here, 20% there. And at the end, that's several $1 million. He has an agency in Dubai, in London, in Geneva, in Milan. And so brokering is really interesting. And very rarely people think about this as a job. So the jobber is very important and they're part of the distribution network. For example, we're talking about Costco. If I want to sell to Costco, what do I need to do? So if I want to sell to Costco, I have to make an appointment. Okay, normal. When I call them to make an appointment, they tell me that based on the category of product, there's 1 week per year. There's 1 week for meat. There's 1 week for radio and music thing. There's 1 week for chips, 1 week for toilet paper, and there's 1 week for spirits. So if I ask them now, and then they say, okay, oh, you want to be reviewed for your product? Okay, so the week for your product is the first week of February. So let's put you down for February 2023. Okay, but before, we need to see if you are interested in your product because there's so many people that want to be reviewed that we have to see if it's worth it. So send us some samples. So then I send some samples. Then the months go by. And then nobody said anything. So then I call, ask for them to tell me anything and all that. 3 months after they answer, and they said, okay, you can come in 2023. Then I show up in 2023. Then I can't believe my eyes. I have 2 minutes and a half to present my cognac. 2 minutes and a half in front of a group of people. Is we just walk in, we present the product next, and we have a number. You know, it's not Frank Vigneron and my cognac. It's number 625. Okay, what is it? Okay, 625. Next, like this. So then it's like I don't sell anything at Costco, and then I go, you know what? I teach this in my class. Maybe I should use what I teach. Should I use what I teach? Nah, don't use what you teach. No, I should use what I teach. So there's the broker. So then I look for Costco broker. So then I found Costco broker, and then I get a meeting the day after. The day after. And this time is not 2 minutes and a half, 20 minutes the day after. and there's 50% chance they're gonna buy. And so that's what happened to me. Nice. I love brokers. Oh, they're so nice. Yeah, but you know what? The brokers wants 25%. So if the brokers takes 25%, I have to increase my prices. So that's what I do. I increase a little bit my prices. But then if I increase my prices and all that, but you know, then there's other people that are going to be cheaper, whatever. So that's why, as an example, Costco is very hard to work with because the brokers are greedy because they know. So how do you become a broker of Costco? You're probably thinking. You become a broker of Costco by connections, who you know. But you can't be just by connections. It's also because those brokers, they save time for Costco. What do you mean they save time for Costco? Is they are brokers that oftentimes have worked at Costco for 10 years, and then they become their own independent employee. They don't work at Costco anymore, but they still know people inside Costco, and they still know what Costco wants. And what they do is they are like private hunter. They hunt for Costco for the good stuff, and when they find it, they tell Costco, I found it. And because every time they bring something to the people of Costco, Costco says, okay, you found another good one, we can trust you. And if this trust keeps on going, they know that every time they show up, it's not to waste their time. So if you call the broker is going to give you the time. And then at the end, he's going to look at you and say, eh, that can't work for Costco. It can't work for Universal. It can't work for Sony. It can't work, right? They know because they have this tight relationship, and that the cleanliness and the likelihood that what you bring to your client is good is how the loyalty continue with the Costco or with the whatever, is because you're not wasting their time. If 3 times in a row you bring something and they go, why did you bring this? You're wasting your time. Probably they never let you come back again. So it has to be something that is worth their time every time. Okay, so I give you, sorry about this, a long explanation.
No,
but this
it's
is
great.
but this is a very important explanation because I know for a fact most of the people know wholesaler, they know the retailer, but they don't know so much about the brokerage in the middle. Besides, real estate, or people also know about financial investment. They know what's a broker, someone that's going to give you access to some options and stocks or whatever. So they know that. But there's that as well. So others here, the 3 things you need to remember is the 3 names that are the 3 strategies of intensive, selective, and exclusive distribution. Intensive distribution means you sell it everywhere. Selective distribution means you sell it 20% of the places. And exclusive distribution means you sell it in just one place. So that's all you need to remember. Everywhere, half of the places, and only one place. And so that's kind of like the 3 strategies of distribution. It's not really complicated to remember what they are. Everywhere, half of the places, and only one place. Then the 4th strategy you need to know about distribution is the push and pull. So the push and pull is explained here as a simple design where you have to, you see someone with a hand that has something in their hand. So you have to imagine it's a dollar bill or whatever, or some money. So essentially, push strategy means that you incentivize the wholesaler. Who's the wholesaler? Incentivize the retailer. Who's the retailer? Incentivize the customers. So if you want to sell more of something, of anything, is you're going to incentivize the wholesaler to take your product. So you tell them, if you take 50% more product, I give you a 20% margin, 20% break, reduction of price. So they take more product. Because they took more product, usually what happens is they also do the same thing to the retailer. So then they go see the retailer and say, hey, right now I have a lot of this. If you take more than you usually do, I give you an incentive. And sometimes the retailer, they keep the incentive that they got from the wholesaler to make more money. So they still sell the thing $100, but they didn't buy it $50 like they usually did, but they bought it $35, so they just make an extra 15%. Okay, so or they can also pass down the incentive that they received to the customer, where they tell the customer with the coupon 15% off. But what you have to remember is they didn't pay for that 15% off. The person that really paid for this is the producer. And so that's why I told you, whenever you get an incentive, it was given by the producer. But what people don't realize is the producer price was 30, yet the customer price is 100. So it costs a lot of money to give a discount, to give an incentive for a producer to the customers using the channel of distribution, because when they sell it $30, they only make 20% margin. But if they're giving the final customer a 15% off, suddenly if you do 20% of $30, that's $6. But if you do 15% of $100, that's $15. 15 minus 6, that's $9. So there's $9 that they have to pay. And that $9 is called, sometimes it's called fat. In the industry, it's called fat. It's essentially that money that you never made that you have to give as an incentives. So what I tell you, all the things I tell you right now are things that have to do with distribution. And as you may realize, it takes a lot of experience to have been inside the situation to really know what it is. And it takes also a little bit of the mind of a salesman or salesperson. Like if someone is a salesperson in the class, they understand everything I said. If someone is really not good at buying and selling, everything I said is Greek for them. So I understand this, but I have to explain it because this is the true operation of distribution that has this pull, push. So that was the push. The pull is the one that you all know, that everybody knows. The one that everybody thinks that's the only way. Pull is you advertise. So what you do is you advertise directly to the customer and you tell them, I don't know, Drake said in TikTok that you should buy this watch. And therefore then people want to buy the watch that they saw that Drake said that they should be, this actor said that you should go to Kentucky Fried Chicken, and then people go to Kentucky Fried Chicken. So that's the common one. It's communication to the customers, who's the customers, then they they want what they want. And therefore, the retailers and the wholesalers, they don't carry or sell this or support this because they want to, but they're doing it because they have no other choices, because that's what the customer wants. So if you're a big company, what is the most common method? Pull and push. If you're a small company, what's the most common method? Push, because pull for the most part is too expensive. However, once upon a time, social media came, and social media, what was the big revolution about social media 10 years ago? It was the fact that small businesses could start to do pull for a dime, for zero. And so that was the most amazing democratic things that ever happened. It's suddenly big business and small business were equal because they could both do push and pull. And in fact, big businesses didn't do social media very well. And therefore, it was the world of the small businesses. And what was this world about? Create your story, tell your story, post your story. Post as often as you can, telling your story and the true voice of your company. And that's how you build the momentum from customers to retailers to wholesalers to the company. It's still true today. You can still post and post and post and post, but it's the Wild West and the gold mine is not as good as it used to be. Now it's more difficult. So this, just to finish before the break, but it's talking about this world of domination. The world of domination is therefore, there is the bargaining power between the manufacturer and the distributors. I've already sort of said that since the beginning of my presentation, in the sense that what is the power to negotiate from the manufacturer perspective? The fact that they have a product where they can control the quality. They produce it, they know if it's how good it is because they're producing it. They have their image and reputation. They also contribute to making profits for the distributors. So Distributors, quote unquote, are nothing without Coca-Cola. If Coca-Cola decides to go and tell, this distributor that they're not going to give them anything, it's a big problem. If tomorrow Vons doesn't have Coca-Cola, but Coca-Cola is only at Kroger's, that's a big problem. So they have this power of generating profit inside the distribution network. And then they have consumer loyalty as well, meaning there's some people, they have to have their Coke every day, several times a day, and so forth. And therefore, that's very important, because then when you make a different model of products, when you create a new song, people have been buying the first album, the second album. Well, when you have the third album that come, it is very, 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 very likely that you will sell some, because the people that like the first and the second will buy the third. So it's the same idea, is you have consumer loyalty, and that's helpful. What about the distributor? So the distributor is the concept of the location. So location being physical, like an address, the location being some famous name of a website, the address of the website becomes the location as well. So the sales volume, obviously that's the negotiating powers, because if they say that they are like for example, Costco is huge in many categories. Probably they're the number one selling water, they're the number one selling wine, they are the number one, they must be pretty high selling tires. So they're very big. So when they negotiate, because of their sales volume, they can negotiate much better, and therefore they are a big chunk of money for the producer. And that's their bargaining power, is you're not looking at one customer, is you're looking at one customer that buys them thousands and thousands. And also they have their consumer loyalty. What's very important to see from this is you can see why 30 years ago, some distributors started creating what is called private label. What are private label? Private label, going back to Costco again, are the product that is made under the brand of the distributor. So if you go to Costco, you'll see there's a lot of products that are called Kirkland. And they're called Kirkland because this is the brand of Costco. Why does Costco have a brand called Kirkland? They have this brand because this allows them to be a two-legged animal, if you want. They have the brands that everybody wants. So they go to Costco to get Coca-Cola, but they also can get the Kirkland Cola. And if Coca-Cola is becoming difficult to deal with, they can say to Coca-Cola, get the heck out of here. Not forever, but for a week or for a month. And at the same time, they can keep selling the Kirkland Cola. Sometimes the Kirkland Cola is actually produced by the big brand. So in the case of Coca-Cola, usually what they would do is they would not ask Coca-Cola to produce the Kirkland Cola, because that would be too insulting. So they would actually ask a smaller guy, like Virgin Cola or RC Cola. They would go to RC Cola and say, you know what, we could take some of your RC Cola at Costco, but you need to be nice to us. So to be nice to us, you're going to make the Kirkland Cola. So the Kirkland, the Kirkland. So the RC Cola is not so upset because they are making the Kirkland, so they're making some money with that. And at the same time, now they get to sell their products. So it's a give and take. The concept of retailing, which I already presented before, is about really selling directly to the consumers. So when you're a retailer, your objective is to buy a product from a wholesaler or from the manufacturer and sell it to the retailer. You are working on a product assortment. So you have to think about how many products do I have? And how much services do I offer? And how is the store atmosphere? Yes, Jeffrey. The product assortment is, you have to decide how many SKUs you have inside your retail store. The idea is that if you have too many products, you're going to be covering too many different needs. So you want either to sell shoes, or you want to sell shoes and clothes, or you want to sell food. And so what is the width, the depth, and the length of all the products that you're selling? Then the amount of services. Do you have people that are trained, that are going to help the customers, or you have nobody in there and the customers just do it all for themselves? Do you have attendants that can make recommendation, they help them to carry the product to their car or whatever. So the services is very important because you don't want to give the maximum amount of services. You want to give the right amount of services based on what these people are willing to afford or how much they are expecting to get. The store atmosphere is the same thing. Is you want to think about the decoration and the placement and the amount of spaces. There's a big difference between a Neiman Marcus and an Aldi store in terms of presentation and the feel that you get. So the store atmosphere is very important. And the store atmosphere should be equal to what's, again, expected by the customers. So how do you separate the different retailers is based on how they organize. Do they produce, do they wholesale, do they retail, or are they just retailers? Again, the amount of services from a minimum amount to a maximum amount of services, and then the quantity of products that they sell, and then their prices, high prices, medium prices, lower prices. Here's some example of different stores. Specialty store, department store, supermarkets. So all of these you're probably familiar with. There's another one that is not so common in America. It's called hypermarket. So hypermarket is just a huge supermarket. It's almost like a mall. What you call a mall in the US is sort of like a supermarket. So there's some hypermarkets in America, and usually it's Walmart has a few mega super large hypermarkets. So wholesaling is about buying fewer products, but in large quantities in order to sell it again. So it's a business to business versus retailing is more of a business to consumer type of service that you provide. All of the activities that a wholesaler have, I've already talked about them just before. And I already talked about this as well, which is that you can be a wholesaler who is actually a producer. So you can be a producer, the manufacturer, that also does the wholesaling, or you can be a retailer that also does the wholesaling. So that's the two most common when you have, why would a retailer become a wholesaler? Because what they do is they develop relationship as a buyer themselves. So they may as well start buying for themselves. So they create hubs where they buy from all the manufacturers, put them in hubs, and then they use these hubs to act as wholesaler for their own retail store. And then the broker is the one that I mentioned that it was very, very important, because the broker is this intermediary that is actually used to create relationship and make connection. So what's going on in wholesaling is there's less and less wholesaler because it's harder to be a wholesaler, because manufacturers, for the most part, are trying to sell directly to the retailer or to the consumers. So the wholesaler is being compressed out. There's little distinction sometimes between retailers and wholesalers, because more and more retailers are developing some wholesale business. The wholesalers, to survive, they have to increase the amount of services. So the typical amount of services is they reduce the minimum purchase order. So wholesalers, for a long time, until the early 2000s, they were sort of the king and queen, and they would impose a minimum order. So they would say, you know, to a manufacturer of furniture, you can only buy 5 miles of material. And this manufacturer would want to buy 5 miles for a certain fabric, but some other fabrics, they would only need 1 mile. So they would be in trouble because they would have to spend so much more money or find another wholesaler. Now wholesalers are actually starting to also become retailers. And so that's why you see Costco that not only sells to businesses, but they also sell to individuals. Wholesalers, to survive, are also becoming international wholesaler, which they start selling not just to local people, but to overseas people. So you see, for example, the Asians in China are really developing this business, and Alibaba is sort of the demonstration of wholesaling becoming global. The next subject is integrated marketing communication. And the idea behind this is that to communicate well is you need to have all the level of communication to have the same message. So communication is made of advertising, public relations, direct marketing, personal selling, sales promotion, and digital marketing, which has social media and so forth. That's the last P that we're going to talk about. What are the most common objective of communication is one is to inform. So communication is not always about persuading. That's the most common way to look at communication, is to get someone to know about something and want to buy it. But sometimes you don't want people just to buy it, but you want people to become familiar. So informing is important, persuading is important. And then there's two more objectives, which is comparing, because sometimes you talk about multiple brands or you talk about a situation, a problem that someone is facing, and you talk about all the variation of choices, and you sort of inform, but by bringing comparisons. And then reminding is the fact that if you've informed and had consumers be persuaded in buying your product, you don't want to stop there. You have to keep repeating your message, otherwise they forget about you. So what's the communication channel? Is someone sending information and someone receiving information. And in between, what do you have? Well, you have the channel, which is what is the medium that is used to actually send a message? Is it TikTok? Is it the Wall Street Journal? That was some example of sources that you've used in your presentation. So that's the channel. It's very important. But before the channel is you have the message, and after the message is you have the person receiving the message. So before you create the message, is you have to think about the elements of encoding, and before the consumers receive the message, is there's the issue of decoding. So encoding is creating the message. Decoding is how people perceive and memorize the message. Encoding is very important, which is that you have to speak the language of the consumers, use their words, what makes sense, and make sure that the targets, the specific target that is being focused on, will understand. So if you're using a joke, for example, in a message, you need to make sure that this is a joke and it's not sort of abrasive or humiliating to anyone, because sometimes things are not interpreted the same way depending on the culture. And so that's the purpose of decoding. Decoding is how was it perceived? And then was it memorized? And what people took an action. So communication, I mean, this is sort of complicated, the slide that you have right now, but simply said is there's a sender that sends a message to a consumer, and there's a channel in between, and there's encoding the message and decoding the message, and then the response. That's all you need to remember. So when this message is sent, it's either sent by a person or it's sent by a magazine. So if it's a newspaper or an email, that's non-personal, versus if it's a person, it's like a salesperson. What's important to realize is the best way to communicate in terms of success of communication is a person. A person is still today the best channel of communication. However, a person is also the most expensive. So if you think about an email is not expensive. You could send 10,000 emails for $300. So that's only 300,000, 10,000. But the problem with email is they're going to be filtered. They may not be opened. They may go to the junk and all of this. A person is going to be more specific and more adapted to the person that they're talking to. There's someone speaking to someone else, and this person is listening, and they adapt because they ask question and answer, and therefore there is something more tailored. So personal communication is the best one because it's more tailored, but again, it depends on the person doing the communication, because there's variation between different people and their capacity to communicate. So how do you measure the success of a communication campaign? Using an example of advertising, is on two things. One is the communication effect, and two is the sales effect. What's important to realize is sales is hard to measure, because sometimes you don't get sales right away, and sometimes it's not that easy to make a direct, like 100% confident direct connection between the message and someone buying. Sometimes there's some other effects that make people buy. However, there is a strong belief of the connection between, obviously, the more you communicate, the more you sell. However, sometimes you have to be careful, because if you over communicate, you may actually reduce sales because people are getting annoyed by the excess of communication. The communication effect is also very important. Is, do people remember the message? Do people remember having seen the ad? That's also extremely important. So setting a communication budget, there's 4 simple methods. The first one is what you can afford. So if you can afford like a niche wacky $2,000 a year, that's your budget. The percentage of sales. If you decide that you want to increase your sales by 20%, simply you decide to increase your budget by 20%. The objective on tasks, so that's the one that is the most complicated, is you have to define specifically what are your objectives. And based on these objectives, you're going to have to think about the best communication methods. And therefore, with these objectives, these are the methods. And these methods will be costing, each one of the methods will have a cost. And then you add all this cost, and then you identify what will the cost be to reach all of these objectives. So like I said, this one is more complicated and it takes more time to put it together. And then the competition parity, it's not complicated, but it takes time, is by evaluating what communication your competitors are doing, and by evaluating how much they communicate and where they communicate, you can evaluate their budget of communication and then decide to do the same budget or more. The next subject of communication, I will talk about sales promotion, and I will talk about public relation and advertising, just three that I'm going to focus on. There's more than, and also I will talk about digital marketing as well at the end. So sales promotion is a mass communication technique that offers short-term incentive to encourage purchase of sales. So what's interesting is sales promotion, you can't use it all the time, but it's a short-term incentives that will generate sales right away. So you tell people 2 for the price of 1 or minus 50%, that's a sales promotion. And people usually respond quickly to this. Examples is a discount, is a premium, is a coupon, giving samples, maybe having a contest, sorry. These will be different methods of doing sales promotions. The objective, again, is you have to go back to what's push and pull. Sales promotion is very much of a push method of communication, which is that you give incentive to the wholesaler, to the retailer, to give you more space in their business, in their catalog, in their website. So that way, that would promote your brand more. Maybe you give them incentives for them to talk about your brand, to feature your brand in order to push this to your consumers. So it's a push strategy. Public relations is not a push strategy in that situation, it's a pull strategy. The idea of public relation is to directly creating some positive word of mouth, creating some favorable publicity where people will have a good, positive attitude towards your company. So you talk to the press, you create documents, you lobby with the important people, you speak to the investors, and you just make all kinds of developments in order to identify where you could find some support from the community. So exercise such as creating speeches, events, writing materials, online materials, visual materials, working on the corporate identity, working on some activities for the public, creating media, social media, and so forth. If there is a trade show, who organizes the trade show is the public relation people. So then you may say, yeah, but our company is only 10 people. So who's going to take care of that, of the public relations, is the marketing. So now, essentially, what's interesting that you see is marketing is all of these different things. So when you're in marketing, you need to do research. When you're in marketing, you need to do consumer behavior. When you're in marketing, you need to do strategies. When you're in marketing, you need to think about who are your customers and identify the segments, the targets, and the positioning. When you talk about positioning, you talk about public relations, you talk about branding. When you talk about research, you talk about creating documents, creating supporting documents that are going to be used also by advertising, by sales. So marketing is all of this, and therefore it's a subject that is very important because it covers a lot of fields. And so the likelihood that anyone that of you will work in marketing is very high during your entire career. It's very likely that you will work in marketing. Another thing that is under marketing as a function inside marketing is advertising. So what is advertising? Advertising is any paid form of non-personal presentation of an ideas, goods, or services by someone who is clearly identified. So what's the difference between PR and advertising? Well, a big difference is in advertising, you pay, and therefore it's clear that you're paying and that this message is obviously biased. Versus in public relation, the purpose is the same. Is you want people to hear about you and to think that your product is great, but you're not identifying always very clearly who's paying, So for example, if you create some press releases for Nishwaki, for example, these press releases, it talks about what Nishwaki is doing and all that. You send it to the press, and eventually the press finds these news and decide to talk about this news. When they talk about this news, you didn't pay for it, and it's free advertising. The reality is it's very rare that the media will take free advertising for you. Oftentimes, public relations is payback. It's a gift for companies that are actually paying for advertising. So I don't want to say the name of a newspaper, but pick any newspaper as you want. If you pay for a lot of advertising in this newspaper, eventually, if your PR people talk to the newspaper and ask them for free information placed inside the newspaper or the radio or the whatever social media, they would say yes. So if you pay on one side, that gives you more leverage to get on the other side something free. It is very rare they give it to you for free unless you've paid for it some other way before. Media selection. So when you choose a media, you think about the reach, the frequency, and the media impact. So the reach is how many people in the target audience is going to be reading this magazine. So the Wall Street Journal has a huge reach of people with income over $200,000. The frequency is the number of times this this channel is going to be looked at, because, for example, a newspaper is obviously read at least by one person. You would imagine the one buying it, but there's other people that may be buying it as well. So there's some channels that get multiple people to actually read this information. The media impact is the perceived credibility that the channel has on specific subjects. So some media are better at talking at politics, and some other media are better at talking about entertainment. Every media has a different level of credibility in the information that they're focusing on, and that's the impact of the media. What are the 7 advertising media? Television, radio, magazines, newspaper, internet, and outdoor media such as billboard and social media. Now, very quick, this is more than what I want to talk about, but I want to tell you one thing, which is that when you create a plan in marketing, it's called a marketing plan. So everybody knows, if I say, this is a marketing plan, they know what it is. In advertising, you can call it an advertising plan. Like you work in advertising and they are writing advertising plan. But they also have another name for it, is they call it a copy strategy. So if you hear someone talk about copy strategy, is essentially they're talking about an advertising plan. It's a small little detail that I wanted you to know, so that way you have heard it at least once in your life. What's a copy strategy, which is the complicated name for an advertising plan. When you advertise, you actually look at 3 directions of the message. So if you look at the bottom of the screen, it says the message is on the product, the message is on the performance, or the message is on the universe. So there are different elements. There's elements which is just looking at the image and emotion of the product and the perceived quality from a visual perspective. Then there's a message from the features and the performance and the result of what you can get from the product, versus the other one, the message on the universe is how does it make you feel, or how you would feel. So let's look at one ad. This is an older ad for a Jaguar. Is this message focused on the product, the performance, or the universe? Are we seeing who's using this car? Is there like a celebrity next to the car? No. If there was a celebrity next to this car, someone famous, we could say it's the universe, maybe. But all we see is the product. So we don't see the product performance. It doesn't look like it's going faster than anyone else, or it's safer than anyone else. So therefore, this is more, or at least definitely, the product. Now we have this bottle of Coke on the side, and this is like a sunset, and it says, the party starts here. Is this the performance, the product, or the universe? This one is more complex than the one that we just looked before. It's actually a combination. So it's very rare that when you communicate and you make advertising messages, that there's only one of the direction. Oftentimes there's different layers. So in this situation, is you have a layer of universe. You know, it looks like warm. It looks like it's the summer. It's party. It's exciting. So there's a little bit of universe. You can see the Coke bottle, but you don't really see much of the Coke bottle. So it's more like a universe, maybe 70%, and product 30%, the combination. So as a recap, and this is just a recap, is when you are in marketing, what you care for the most? You care about satisfaction. Satisfaction is measured after people have purchased the product. What do you satisfy? You satisfy people need. You cannot create need. You just satisfy existing needs. You satisfy these with the product. What's a product? It's a generic name for a good, a service, a location, an ID, an organization, all of these. Yes, Rebecca.
Sorry, this is a little bit of a tangent, but you said you can't create needs, but is that always true? I'm just like wondering in terms of perhaps like the medical and pharmaceutical industries, like is there any suggestion to believe that they might be creating needs for us to take certain medication? Like, you know,
Yeah, so
maybe they could be endorsing the sugar industry to promote basically creating a need for insulin for type 2 diabetes later on, or is that not
yeah.
something?
Well, yeah. So thank you for asking your question. This question, it's a very good question, and it's a very deep question. So the answer to this is that you have to first assume and agree that the needs are the needs according to Maslow hierarchy of needs. Oh, I don't know that I don't have it anymore. That was last week. I still had it last week, but I don't have that anymore. So it's this concept of the Maslow hierarchy of needs. If you remember that, there is the first needs are physiological. The second needs are social. The third level of needs are egocentric. And then the fourth level of need are personal. So you don't create those needs. They are human needs that you need to drink. And so what the pharmaceutical industry is, they don't really create the need. What they do is they create a situation where people need to be safe. So we need to be safe and we don't want to get hurt. And so that need, they didn't create it. It's an innate need. What they, yeah, and so there is, you know, what they do is they create want. So there's a situation where it's possible that someone will die if they don't take this medication, right? Many times. And there's a situation where the people take the medication because they think there's no other choices. So it is true that there is, you know, but at the end, you still satisfy a need, which is a need for safety, a need for like drinking. You have to drink, otherwise you die. But why do we drink this versus that? It's because they have made the perception that we think that we need them in order to drink. You know, and that's why sometimes you have I give you a bit of a philosophical answer to your philosophical question. That's why there's some religion, they go through, like the Muslim, through the Ramadan. And the purpose of the Ramadan is to remind you of what you really need. You know, so it's sort of to go back to the basics and simple things. You know, I remember in the early 90s, my parents and a group of friends, we were collecting shoes. that people had, and they were still in very good condition. And we were collecting medicine that was expired, but they were expired because for some legal reason they had to expire this medicine, but in fact they still work. I'm not a doctor, I can't tell you which one, but there's certain, like all the medicine needs to expire after 3 years. But if you pay attention, there's some that really expire after 3 years, and there's some that they last much longer than that. So we went in the community when we picked these. We went in North of Africa, and we were going for a month with our 4-wheel drive from village to village, giving these. I did it for 3 years in a row. And the third year when I went, we were not received very well, because the shoe that we were bringing, they were not the fashion shoe, the fast fashion shoe. They were shoes, that were fashionable maybe 5 years ago or whatever. And when we went to that village, I remember giving the shoe, and the kids look at the shoe, and there was one kid that looked at me and he said, Michael Jordan. And I said, what do you mean? So yeah, Michael Jordan in 2022 doesn't impress you, but this was in 92 or something like that. And I was like, I can't afford Michael Jordan. Why is this person asking me for Michael Jordan? And so we're puzzled. And then what we found is in that village, there was one person that had a parabol, a TV, and he was able to get the, what was it? MTV channel back in 92 or something. And on MTV channel, they were showing all the celebrity, mostly from the US. And these people just got it. They went from nothing, they had no shoe, to suddenly having MTV and seeing Michael Jordan, whatever, Nike Super XL Turbo. And when they saw us coming and we didn't have really big fancy brands, they thought that we were short-changing them. And I thought this was really sad, because suddenly they had developed a different perception of need, which they didn't have before. And so obviously in marketing, you can change the perception of the want, but the need for shoes, for example, is protection. It's the basic first level need, which is safety. So without going further in philosophy with this, did I answer sort of your question?
Yeah, I think so. I think I was thinking of it like less in terms of Maslow's
Yes,
hierarchy
exactly.
and more in
Yes,
terms of like general needs, but that makes sense if you think about it like that.
exactly. So it's the question of the definition of the word need, exactly, how you define it. So thank you for your question. I love the question, to be honest, because that's how we can make, I suppose, more interesting. Now, the issue of benchmarking is something that we talked about, where you have to look at your competitors and what they are doing. So you do a SWOT for your own company, and essentially you have to do sort of a SWOT for your competitors. What's the purpose of doing a SWOT for your competitors? Is you are able to see their strengths and their weaknesses, seeing where you're going to be stronger than them, see what they're really good, and see if you can borrow from where they're very good, and try to copy them on some of the directions, the strategy, the opportunities they may have identified. You try to see their positioning, you try to guess their strategies and see if you can adopt some of these. I mean, there's so many, I mean, Apple, everybody's doing a benchmark on Apple. And what's the reason for doing a benchmark is to see if they can learn something that they can adopt. So that's the idea. But also you're looking at their targets and see which segment characteristics they're using. And so you're just learning. Benchmarking is learning about what you should be worried about and what you should be sort of getting inspired. Then you have multiple strategies, and we've discussed that. This is just a review. And then finally, when you look at this perspective, is you have the 5 Porter forces that also allows you with the SWOT, with the PESOL, to get some kind of overview of the market and what's more likely to happen and what you should fear the most, and in order to make decisions. Finally, the last one of the communication methods that I want to talk about is online marketing. So it can be done through a website, search ads, display ads, emails, and it's just different options for communication. The advantages is that you can have specific messages that you send. You can track more easily, because I was talking about tracking sales. Tracking sales is very difficult, but through the internet, it's much easier because you can use the cookies and all the click and the unique views and all that in order to track. You can find and make some adjustment very quick. So you can find what works, what doesn't work, and make adjustments because it's just a visual thing. You can also work with the search engines and work with your SEO and make some improvements. However, the disadvantage is people are more experienced now, and they look for information and they are quick at screening out. The ads are not as effective, and also you can get issues related to being hacked and all that. That was not the case before, because I mean, you could have been vandalized at your store. It's sort of the same, but these are issues that you get into. So what you need to do in your design of the website is think about the content, what you're going to put, too little content, too much content, what specific content, what community you're going to be taking care of, the amount of customization that people will have the opportunity to get from your website, and then the different connections, the link, and how much you will have a store that will come in the front or in the back of your website, or maybe the store is from someone else. The social media is developing some online communities, some blogs, and some social networks. Social media is therefore used more and more so, but the social media is just a common practice today, but it's possible that in 10 years it'll be very different. So social media is not the only way to communicate. Why do I say that? It's because I see it more and more where people think, before people used to think all there is social media, like advertising, public relation, all this has disappeared. Now it's even worse, is people think there's only TikTok and Instagram. They don't think of the other media anymore as being as important. So the idea is to, through social media, is to engage more directly with consumers, and also to generate word of mouth, because obviously the best marketing is word of mouth, and that's sort of the conclusion where I want to go. The more you have word of mouth, the more you can say that you've been successful in marketing, and the least you have to invest in marketing. So creating word of mouth is essentially what's called buzz marketing, is trying to identify some influentials, giving them samples, making them try your product, and then find who is important and influential in which community, trying to incentivize word of mouth, and then giving them the opportunity to share information as well. Mobile marketing is this idea of having an app where people can use the app in order to make purchases, for example. The advantage of mobile marketing is it's tied to one users, it's 24/7, and it can be a way where people actually purchase, so they can get informed, they can get persuaded, reminded, and compare again. It's the same kind of objective that you have, and it's very interactive. So people can ask questions, you can have chats, you can have ways to communicate with them. And then now with the access to AI, it's becoming even more interesting to use these mobile marketing. So what's important is to be short. You want to have not too much information on your screen for the app. You want to have the logo to be very visible. And then you want always to have call to action to be very clear. So just to conclude and remind you, the format for the quiz will be the same thing, 30 multiple choice and 2 open-ended questions. Again, it's important that you elaborate, that you define, that you justify, and that you provide examples. So I said that last time, and there were, I would say 20 out of 30 people did that, but there were still 10 people that for some reason didn't do that. So hopefully this time, everybody will do that. So again, elaborate, define, justify, and provide examples. And if you remember, that's sort of what I did here, is that you have the time to write down a few ideas, and then you use these ideas to create an argument, and then do not hesitate to give examples, your own personal examples, or examples that were in the class. I think that's a good idea. Not everybody gave examples. Maybe half of the students gave examples and half didn't. So I'm just suggesting that it's always a good idea to give examples when you answer the question. The short open-ended question is sort of like this: should companies do marketing research? And then that was the one from last quiz. So there's going to be something like this for the next one. Okay. The format to study again is the same: is look at the textbook, read the subjects that are in the next quiz. The subjects are in the syllabus again, and they are also on the first page of the review. So the review is not sufficient. Read the textbook, look at the review. If everything in the review is clear, that means that you are probably ready to take the quiz. And then take a good chunk of your time for doing the open-ended. You should have the time. Last time there were people that were done in 40 minutes. There were something like half of the students that were done in less than an hour. So you have the time. You have the time to elaborate, define, and all this. You should.
Another Alex Ricci presentation. So he is a self-proclaimed Latin pop urban reggaeton artist, according to his LinkedIn page. And so we are Team 5. Marlon, Jesse, Natalie, Darwin, Christopher, Stacy, and me. Okay, so Alex Ricci, we are not too sure if he has updated his socials, but it says that he is 23 years old, and he's a fan of soccer and basketball. Some artists that he's inspired by is Shakira and Ricky Martin, and he does have a passion for singing in front of an audience. And some of the big venues that he's performed at includes the Ford Theater, CryptoArena.com, formerly known as Staples, and then also the LA Sports Arena. So now the problem with him is that we're going to get straight into here is a lack of social media presence. Not He doesn't have a TikTok, and we will show you exactly why that's a problem, because the audience that would sorry, I'm not feeling so well, so I have like a big brain fart right now. But anyway, so he has a clear lack of a brand image, and he's not very understanding of his target audience, like who they are and how he should market to them.
Okay, so Alex Ritchie, as a musician, as he is from Hispanic heritage, he is a part of the Latinx community. His music is a mixture of reggaeton and mariachi, so it has a lot of live instrumentation as well. And through his clothing and his look, he likes to pay homage to the mariachi kind of style. Some of his values and traits as an artist, as he's expressed, are his family, his culture, obviously, community wrapped up in that, standing up for social issues such as equality, gender, and education.
Um,
So let's looking at the Latin market overall. Latin music listeners comprise mostly of millennials and Gen X. 41% of the listeners are between the ages of 18 and 24, that being 62% female and 38% male. 74 identify as Latin or prefer to speak Spanish. 73 of the listeners agree with the statement that cultural and ethnic heritage is an important part of who I am. So the pride is very strong in the community. And 97% of the listeners own a smartphone or some kind of smart device. Looking at the trends, 8 out of 10 most viewed music videos of the year worldwide were Latin. So it's been a large boom in the Latin music community, with artists like Bad Bunny specifically, who have really kind of blown this up. Billboard reports that 24 Spanish language songs hit the Hot 100s in 2018, compared in 19 in 2017. These numbers just keep growing.
all right, so we decided to do our own research here. We decided to use this method called quota sampling. And this is the method to quickly gather some primary data, and it's just to also, to identify some important characteristics that we just want to know. And so we try to replicate that data where Marlene just said it was 41% of listeners of that genre is between 18 to 24 years old. But here's the thing: those surveys, you have to be 18 years old and up to complete those surveys. So we decided to target some high school students here, 15 to 18 years old, so still around that demographic. And we asked 80 students, who 98% are Latino, just so you know, they are sampled from a school where it's about 92% Latino, and 75% are on record to where they come from a household that speaks primarily Spanish. And it's also located in Los Angeles, which is where Alex Ricci seems to be based on since he graduated from CSUN. And so we just want to show you some samples of his music and then also maybe identify the problems there. So here's the first one here. This was back in 2020.
Tú me decías que eras mía, que era dueño de tu corazón, que tú sin mí te morirías. Pero mira que se te murió, te fuiste con ese que no vale nada. Y ahora me vienes llorando a rogar, de nuevo queriendo ligar. Pero el muerto, muerto está.
Just as a sample, and then now here's another one where it's a more cinematic kind of in style.
¿Qué pasó? ¿Qué pasó? Me dejaste sin decir adiós. ¿Qué pasó? ¿Qué pasó? Pero ahora te digo que no.
So that was like a sort of like a traditional take right at the beginning. And just to save time here, he's given some kind of poison by this lady, and he somehow got poisoned into the year 2021, and it becomes a different genre here. So I'll just show you a little sample here.
Salud. ¿Qué pasó? ¿Qué pasó? Tú quisiste con el bobo y te dejó. ¿Qué pasó? ¿Qué pasó? Que de cara tu orgullo se cayó.
Just want to show you that sample because these were videos that we show to the students. And so when we asked them for their opinions afterwards, so one person said he's singing in a Puerto Rican style in one song and also saying the word Puerto Rico, but holding up a Mexican flag and wearing mariachi attire in another. So I captured the little caption here. And then so a few students said, yeah, what's up with that? And then another student said, in the Que Paso video, I only liked the beginning where he was singing with the mariachi girl. And then, so going forward here, now we've got another one where there was a perceived lack of authenticity and uniqueness. So here's just a sample here. This one is the most recent back in November that was released on his Instagram. He's just being featured here. He's not the main singer for this.
El amor que tú prefieres. En las buenas y en las malas, sin cadenas ni carteles, dale todo, ataca con lo que tienes. Y ahora lloré más. Yo tengo para amarte, vente para acá. Y déjame ligarte si quiero más. Y déjame besarte como antes, pero dime lo que quieres, que somos lo que prefieres, pero sé que aún recuerdas la primera vez. Juntos tocando el cielo, eso yo no sé. Dejamos ya la estupidez, arreglemos ya de una vez. Y necesito te olvídate.
Yeah, so as you can read here probably while you're watching this, overall, the kids were not having it. Like, no, I don't like it. They were trying hard to be Daddy Yankee. or just there's so many like artists already like doing this. So there's nothing unique about him. Now going forward, so I showed them even more videos. These are the last ones here. Now these they did have a more positive reaction to. So here's another one where he's featured.
Tienes el corazón roto, es porque fuiste con otro. Cuando hicimos el amor, recuerdo el brillo de tus ojos. Como le dijo en el coro, ese cabrón está loco. No, no, ese güey no tiene el oro. Mami, veo muy claro lo que sientes. Llora, llora por un hombre que te miente. Eso te duele. Yeah, 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 yeah.
So, and then in that part, they said, I really liked his voice because he's just more melodic and using more of his capabilities as a singer. So they like that more melodic type of singing there. And here's another one where it looks like he's doing a duet on or Instagram or something.
Mira, pase lo que pase, ven y tómame la mano. Mamacita, te encamino hasta tu clase, yeah. Tú eres mi única y lo sabes. Mi corazón tiene las llaves, mi corazón tiene la clave. Cuando me tocas aquí muy suave. Tus ojos son los ojos más hermosos en el mundo. Tu boca es la boca más hermosa en el mundo. Ya sé que te dije esto ayer. Ya sé, ¿qué más te voy a hacer?
All right, so yeah, so according to them, it feels more real now, and it's just more variety to his artistry. Whereas the ones where he was rapping, like the Que Paso one, it's just very stagnant. It just felt very monotone to them, is what they said. And so he calls himself Latin pop, urban, reggaeton. So that's like three genres right there. And just so you know that the issue with fusion of genres is that with a lack of understanding of what a genre's audience feels is important or characteristic of that genre, and you mess with that, you can turn people off and cause a disconnect between the audience and your music. And your music here is your product. And so going forward here, overall perception, when we're talking about the branding and imagery, I asked them, what about his look? They're like, what look? We don't even know what he looks like. Because he's got all these different types of looks within a year span of videos. And so he looks different in every video. I honestly don't know what he looks like. And then one kid even said, he's got too many flavors. You know what I mean? And then he says also he needs to stick to one style, mariachi or pop. So when he sang the more Spanish type of songs, it just felt too pop. Um, and then someone even asked, where is he even from? What part of Mexico? It's very big. And then also he mentioned Puerto Rico. So they're more confused there. And then as for musicianship, again, it's very pop. And so when he tried to do that mariachi, when he dons on that mariachi attire, it's just very, it causes a disconnect for the kids. So that's some primary data for you. And we'll take it to Natalie to talk about other artists.
Thanks, Amy. So we talked a little bit about the Latin music and how it's really grown in popularity over the last few years. And as we've listened to the different songs and videos from Alex Ritchie, we're seeing that there's a lot of different sounds and sonic elements going on. As Amy talked about, he classifies his music as Latin pop urban, which again, fusing a lot of different genres together, and as Amy mentioned, can actually turn off listeners. So it's important to first understand Latin music and reggaeton and understand what different artists are doing in the genre and what's working, what's not working. So on the left, you'll see the breakdown of the most popular artists by country. And as you can see, we surveyed the countries in South and Central America. And of course, you see popular Latin artists such as J Balvin, Daddy Yankee, but you're also seeing those pop artists like I'm seeing Ed Sheeran, I'm seeing Camila Cabello, who kind of toes the line of pop and Latin music. So over on the right, we took the most popular Latin artists and tried to show how their sounds either are similar or different from others. So you can see Alex Ritchie is on the rightmost side in the middle, as he's not explicit, he's not really swearing, he's not being suggestive in his music, but it is a mix of reggaeton as well as genre bending because he's mixing so many different sounds together. And just for reference, you can see Shakira up in the top right is not explicit, very genre bending. Over on the top left, you're seeing Pitbull, who is explicit, who is genre bending. And then, of course, bottom left is Daddy Yankee, J Balvin. Those are explicit artists that kind of side more on the reggaeton side of things. So we thought it was important to understand what's going on in Latin music, what's working for artists, what's not working for artists, and where Alex Ritchie really falls in the genre as he's still clearly figuring out his sound and his niche with his music. So with that, we'll toss it over to Darwin.
Thank you, Natalie. So based on information provided from Nielsen Scarborough report, we found 3 core markets that make up Alex Ritchie's fan base. The first fan is a female Latina, 22 years old. She lives in Miami. She enjoys going out to nightclubs with her friends. And we found this important because Alex Ritchie's fans are more likely to attend live music events, particularly in the Latin night thing club scene. Fan number 2 is male Latino, 27 years old. He lives in Los Angeles, California, and he's heavily influenced by social media. As we mentioned earlier, Alex Ritchie fans are millennials and Gen X, of which 54% Hispanics share music on social media, and that's about 34% above the average population. And fan 2 is more likely to use word of mouth marketing, which is reposts and interactions through stories. And lastly, our last fan is Latina, 24 years old. She also lives in Los Angeles, California. She enjoys shopping, fashion, and pop culture. And we found this important because 67% of women are more likely to purchase a product regarding an artist that they like, and more specifically, Alex Ritchie's, if he has like future merchandise and collaborations, this fan group will be more susceptible to buy into his products. And now we're going to go over some data and stats. As we mentioned earlier, he doesn't have a huge social media, following. So from what we gathered, he has about 15,000 Instagram and Facebook followers, 294 subscribers on YouTube, and he has about 4,000 views. And Spotify, he has about 54 monthly listeners. And right now he's at 14,000 streams. This little clip on the right is from Chartmetric, and we weren't able to get the full report, but basically they were saying that within the last 3 months he was up like 10% or so, which is about 260 monthly followers that follow Alex Ritchie. So now to get into the marketing, I'll pass it over to Chris.
Much appreciated. So here we have a timeline for the first 3 years. Year 1 will be focusing on refining his sound, his look, and his social media presence. When we get to year 2, we'll touch on the future of owning his music. We'll focus on the future of owning his music and continuing to build his brand. Once we reach year 3, the focus will be on a label and management services. When it comes to our tools, we'll be focusing on identifying, messaging, social media platforms, design and copying. Our strategies will be competitive positioning, brand strategy, channels of distribution. And when it comes to tactics, we campaign planning, come up with a market plan, whether it be traditional and non-traditional media events, and then search engine optimization.
So going more in depth into year 1, we'll be again focusing on refining his sound and look and building a social media presence. So from the feedback that we got, he really needs to pick one style and look to establish his consistency and branding. We need some more clarity in his biography and background and how it appears in his music, and also to change up some elements from his musicianship and just clarify that genre a little bit more. So Alex Ricci, he's a big proponent of the Latinx music community, and it also ties into how he can refine his sound. Traditionally, the Latinx community is known for breaking the mold, drawing on unique cultural experiences from Latin America and the United States, the combination of those two, especially in unorthodox ways. So musically, the lyrics could be they would regard inclusiveness and empowerment of underserved communities, women, LGBTQ, communities of color, and things, and those types of demographics. And it has a tendency towards, or Latinx artists have a tendency towards innovative ideas, and especially genre fusion based on their cultural backgrounds. So in thinking about that some next steps that he could possibly take based on the participant responses, particularly focusing on his branding and imagery in this first phase, include emphasizing the bridge between the Mexican culture and reggaeton, right? So as opposed to being just claiming that he is a Mexican artist and maybe showing flags in his videos, making a more explicit connection in there, and also collaborate with similar genre bending artists. And I've listed three actually pretty good friends of mine that do just that. So the first one is Nancy Sanchez, who does a mix of mariachi and electrocumbia. The next one is Renee Ghost, who's actually from the East Coast, and she does mariachi and folk pop. I should say folk pop. And the last one is Crisol from right here in LA, and she does mariachi and dream pop. Moving on.
All right, so we're looking now at year 2. So as Jesse said, the first year we're looking more towards branding and social media presence. And so now we're going past that. We want to look into NFTs, which are growing in popularity. And we think that Alex Ricci could really use this and benefit from it. So NFTs are unique collectibles. They can't really be replaced with anything else. They are essentially anything digital. And so we want Alex to have another income stream and also to be able to continue to hold on to his own music and own his masters. And so we think it'd be great for him to jump into NFTs, specifically releasing things to his fans, which by now he's built up a fan base by working on his branding and his artistry. And so we think he could release things such as unreleased music, at this point, artwork, remix tracks, and we think creating these as NFTs will help to boost his fan base and to continue to work on that marketing. And so looking ahead to year 3, we believe at this stage, at year 3, it would be great for Alex Ricci to step into the next step of his career, which would be signing with Virgin Music Label and Artist Services. So what's really cool about Virgin Music is that they are one of the world's largest independent distribution companies, and they are under Universal Music Group. And they specifically focus a lot with independent artists. So they really know how the artist community works, and they offer lots and lots of services. So some of that includes help with sync, sales, marketing, radio promotion, web development, and even more than that. And so we really think that this would help to Alex Ricci to take his career up to the next level. And specifically, we chose Virgin Music because in February of 2021, they relaunched into a global division, and they are marketing that they are the first fully integrated label services division that is global for Latin music access, both for international and local markets. And so we think that this would be a great opportunity for Alex Ricci to really hop onto and again, expand his career with some more help. And with that, I will pass it back to Natalie.
Thanks, Stacey. So again, talking about some growth opportunities for Alex Ricci. We do want to note that 22.8% of Latin consumers are more likely to support a product that's either designed or created or backed by a celebrity or, for lack of a better word, famous person. So that's something important to keep in the back of our minds. So obviously, we really need Alex to have a better social media presence. I think it's clear that there's no strong brand, there's no strong aesthetic. So that should be decided for his music, whether he chooses more of that reggaeton side or the mariachi side. He also should be displaying his personal life online. He's a young up and coming artist, and he should really have his fans feeling engaged and connected to not only his artistry, but also his persona. Some suggestions are TikTok, Triller, and Instagram lives or Facebook lives, where you can really dive in and see what's going on in his personal life and what his personality is. There's also a great opportunity for him to capitalize on the increasing popularity and mainstream movement of reggaeton. This could really help him either collaborate with different artists or have different opportunities as this genre of music is increasing in popularity. In addition, the mariachi scene is also expanding. So again, lots of collaboration opportunities for artists in both the reggaeton and mariachi side of the industry, which we think would really benefit him, as collaborations like he's done in the past has given him notoriety, given him more views and entries into different markets. The college, thank you. The college events and radio stations going back in person are a great way for Alex Ritchie to expand his artistry. And we'll talk more about that in the second slide, and as well as all of his other brand partnerships. So firstly, the Latin American Music Society through NAMM would be a great organization to partner with. Their main fan base for NAMM is the Millennial and Gen Z generation, as NAMM is known for their Generation Next campaign for high school and college students, and as well as their Latin American Music Society. So this would sort of be the best of both worlds. He can really capitalize on that young adult demographic that we know is his fans, as well as Latin American music demographic, which are also his fans. And as you know, NAMM is the largest organization of professional music industry professionals in the world. And for that, he can attend, the NAMM conference. He can post on social media for them and be a spokesperson and supporter of their different events, especially that Generation Next event for college students. In terms of a social media collaboration, as I mentioned, there's no consistent social media posting. So a great suggestion is posting on Instagram 3 to 5 times per week, posting on TikTok or Triller daily to really allow fans to get that personal scope into his life and his persona, and then collaborating with different artists on Instagram and TikTok lives. Amy showed us a video earlier of him doing a collaboration with a different artist on Instagram, and it got him a lot of views and, of course, expanded his audience. So that may be a great next step for him. And then to continue with our brand partnerships, as I mentioned before, 22.8% of Latin American consumers will be more likely to purchase an item that's designed by a celebrity. So Adidas has their own line of the Hispanic heritage cleat called the, I'm gonna say it wrong, the Adi Zero, which is their cleat and sneaker to honor Hispanic heritage. As you can see the picture in the right-hand side. Adidas is the third most popular youth sneaker brand in America. So lots of opportunity for Alex to really dive into that youth market with a really successful company like Adidas. As Stacey mentioned, we think there is opportunity in the NFT department, especially if we want Alex to break into an older demographic of fans. NFTs are really popular right now, especially with that mid to late 20s demographic. And it would just allow more people to be aware of what he's doing as an artist and create more visibility for him on a different platform. And lastly, as I mentioned previously, college and universities, especially college radio stations and event planning committees, are a great way to expand reach, as it allows him to be introduced to a heavily concentrated group of potential new fans. And college shows and concerts are just great exposure, especially in regions where he already has listenership like Southern California.
All right, and to tie together everything that we've been talking about, so our three main areas for Alex Ritchie that we're focusing on is building his social media presence, building his brand, and continuing to expand his artistry, specifically focusing on social media, such as opportunities with Instagram and TikTok, creating those profiles, and also continuing to routinely post on them, including collaborating with influencers, building his brand, such as radio stations like Natalie just talked about, and continuing to just build his overall sound, as well as investigating his possibility of working with NFTs and creating those. And then finally collaborating with brands like Adidas, which Natalie just mentioned, and also signing with that Virgin Music label, artists and services, and getting a team to help him with all different types of platforms and opportunities. And so, thank you.
And then we have our SWATs at the end. And we're excited.
Well, all I have to say is the Wednesday, the 16th of March is next week, not tonight. This is too good. This is, I mean, I always hope for the last team to be the superstar, but I can only sort of pray for it. You guys did it. This is like, whoa. Man, congratulations. It's fantastic. Actually, you know, oftentimes I cut the presentation from what I post online just because I want to leave just the essential lecture and all of this, but yours is so good, I'm going to leave it in there because I want people to see this, and I want the other team to go back to your video to know what they're supposed to do next week. But then I'm worried about that because now I have just so you know, I have huge expectation for you for next week. After what you did tonight, I mean, I don't think I need to see you on Saturday. I don't think I need to see you on Saturday. If you want, I don't need to see you on Saturday.
You could take off the quiz too.
What? No. This is so good. Fantastic. That's what we're talking about. You know, I mean, there's a little bit of repetition. Obviously, it's a little long. You know, so one is it's too long for next week, but it's so good that I didn't say anything. I didn't want to stop you. You know, because you're doing it at the last class, and essentially you're sort of gonna inspire everybody. Everybody could see what you're doing. I think there's it's funny because you did the Alex Ritchie presentation that is perfectly useful for Nishwaki. You know what I'm saying? It's like a hybrid. There's so much that you have in there. And in fact, pretty much every slide is like what you should do. So if you can go back to this and remove the repetition, a simple one, you know, when Christopher Howard came, he gave a quick overview, and that was really good.
This one?
Yes. And I think that was a fantastic overview, but I don't think it's necessary for whoever does that, you know, to have gone to some of the details on the right side. It was good, just what you did on the year one, we do this, the year two, we do this, year three, we do that. This was so good. I was like, oh, I hope he's going to present what's on the right side. And then he went very quick to the right side. And I was like, oh, if the right side was done, it would be perfect. And then this was Jesse that came, and he went into detail of what's on the right side. And I went, yes, that's exactly what I wanted. But it was just a little too long, therefore, that you did it, what Christopher did, because it was not necessary to go in any detail since it was covered afterwards. So there's very little you need to do to this to make it perfect, you know, but it doesn't matter. I'm still going to give you the 7 maximum points because this has happened several times in this class that people went above and beyond. But when it comes to the client presentation, this is the only group that went above and beyond. And it's great because it's the last one, the last one necessary for everyone to see. And this one was particularly done in a way that if the other team didn't see it, I hope your team sees it. There's a lot of what's in there that you can use in Nishwaki. I mean, you use the positioning table. I don't remember if they used that in the previous. I mean, what's very nice, I tell you what's very nice. I had a meeting from 5 to 6:15 or 17 today, 5 to 6:17 with a group. And so they can hear me now. And, you know, you're working on the opportunities and all of this and all of that. At the end, I'm saying this to which group was it? It was group 2. At the end, what's very important is group 5 presented the way they wanted to present, right? You didn't use very much the slide and the video that I gave you, not that much, right? No. And so you did your own thing. And that's very, very important. What you felt was necessary for the artist to do. You use your own feelings, your own ideas, what you think it was good. You were very strategic. And then you gave us the tactics. It was good that way. You were very much, this is what the competitors are doing. Your opinion of overcrossing the gender, that is a risk, and it can backfire and all of this. You had a lot of that. And so what happens with Nishwaki is you need to present what you think makes sense. At the end, what I want you to do, and I'm glad this is recorded, is one, it has to be yours. Forget everything I told you, make it your own. But I need to see opportunities which are opportunities. Unfortunately, if you go back to your slides, they are not all opportunities. It's what's on the left is on opportunity, and what's on the right, it looks more like what they need to do. So remember, opportunities are not what you're supposed to do. Opportunities, so I want to see that somewhere. And actually the slide that you had was very simple and good to have. Number 2 is I want you to think long-term for the artist. You know, remember we had this discussion at the beginning of the class. Vove is short-term. Vove is like what they need to do for the next 3, 4, 5 weeks, right? That's what they do, it's something else. You need to project yourself in the future. And I thought this was very good also. You did this qualitative research. I know it's not many people, we all know that, but you brought the statements, and you brought the statements in a very intelligent way, very clever. And you had the statements and why did they say that, and you had the video. You made us live through your own research on qualitative research. It was very personal, it was very authentic, very helpful. Yeah, use this format, be strategic, tell us what's the strategy, the big picture, tell us the opportunities, do your research, tell us how you found the information. That's it. This is the perfect thing that I want people to see when I try to explain what they need to do. So you did it. So now in my head, I cannot take out of my head that I think that you can do it for Nishwaki. But I tell you what, on Wednesday night, if you do something less than this, I would be very sad. Because I'm going to think that you should have never been cohort 9, that you should have been cohort 8. You got the wrong artist, maybe. So I hope you don't have the wrong artist, that this was like the perfect artist for you. I hope you can repeat that.
I mean, we just saw like a great opportunity where I teach the population that consumes this. So that drove a lot of our decisions.
Yeah, it maybe the helps is true, but yeah, but don't try to justify that you can't do it again. You got to do it again. Just I think you can do it again. Don't mix the opportunity. Be strategic. Have the phases as well, like you did the 1, 2. So you did year 1, year 2, year 3. I don't know if that's what you need to use for Nishwaki again, but you know, when I think all these young artists, and that's why I think this is also good for the MIA students overall, all the young artists are going to suffer from the same weaknesses in a way. You know, every video, they have a different way to dress. It's not very clear what their identity is, right? I think that's going to come every time because that not I'm Matters didn't have this problem though. So and hardcore not so much either, but Alex Ritchie, Mishwaki. So congratulations. What else can I say? A job well done, a great inspiration for the class, a perfect way to finish the class before the presentation.
Thanks,
That's good.
Professor.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody. See you on Saturday.